3 voices after the divorce. I made the decision to vanish. Quietly, not in a dramatic manner. I drove north until the cell service faded, sold everything that wouldn't fit in the back of my old pickup, and used the proceeds to purchase 40 acres of rugged timberland close to the Idaho border. There are no neighbors within 20 miles. That was the whole idea. During the first month, it seemed like liberty. I excavated a spring line, installed solar panels, and constructed a little cabin by hand. One luxury that I retained was at night. A shortwave radio might take up distant broadcasts. It was for emergencies, I reminded myself. I honestly didn't want to be entirely by myself with my thoughts. While chopping firewood one evening in early November, I saw new tire marks on the logging road that crosses my land's furthest edge. Wide stance, deep treads, and a strong 4-wheel drive. Perhaps 200 yards in, the track came to a stop and turned all around. I walked after them. They came to an end at a location where people occasionally shoot weapons or dump trash. This time, there was just one brand new red plastic gas can with the price sticker still on it. I carried it back, thinking someone would come back after running out of petrol. On my porch, I left it. The can vanished after 3 days. A folded piece of notebook paper rested beneath a rock in its position. The handwriting was tidy, almost childlike. I'm grateful. Do you need anything? Simply ask. No name, no footprints heading out. I looked. I heard a faint chat between 2 men that evening on the radio. The signal bounced strangely, as if they were close, even though they were using channel 19, the trucker channel. He's alone up. I told you. There. It doesn't matter. He grabbed the can. That implies that he is either amiable or foolish. Static followed by laughter. I quickly shut off the radio and sat with my gun over my lap in the dark. I was not asleep. I discovered a second note the following morning. While I was out inspecting snares, they snuck under my door. Behind the woodshed. We left you a gift. Don't throw it away. There was a cardboard box behind the shed. There were 2 freezer-burned solid packages of ground beef and a rubber-banded roll of $100 bills inside. 40 of them, $4,000, under the cold. The flesh had an odd, metallic fragrance. I set fire to the meat on my stove. I concealed the cash beneath the floorboards in a coffee can. I made the 45-minute drive to the I asked around at the feed shop and inquired about the closest town with mobile service. The elderly man working behind the counter was familiar with every car in 3 counties. He scratched his beard and replied, "Red petrol can." The Cook brothers would be that. Meth is run up the ancient fire. Roads, as cruel as snakes, dot its best to avoid them. How many brothers are there? 3. I'm still breathing. A few years ago, I lost one. Fell through a mine shaft or something. They dislike having outsiders on their pathways. For a week, I drove home faster than I should have and purchased more ammunition. Nothing. When I woke up one morning, my generator was gone. Long gouges were dragged in the earth, not stealthily taken, all the way to the tree. They also took the chain. I adhered to the marks. 50 yards deep in the forest, the trail simply came to an end. It disappeared, leaving no tracks or generator. With the keys in my hand, I fell asleep in my truck. The night I heard singing then arrived. A man's voice flowed through the trees as I dozed off in the taxi. A sluggish, low hymn that I vaguely recalled from my early years. Perhaps he was 100 yards away, circling my clearing slowly. A second voice spoke up. The same song, but a different verse, little off-key. Then a third higher, practically giggling as he spoke. I made an inch crack in the window. The song ceased. A warm, calm voice called out, "You're still awake there, friend." I didn't respond. "We just want to talk about the money and the meat." I turned on the engine and swept the treetops with the headlights. I noticed them for a moment. 3 men were standing next to each other at the edge off pale faces of the light, all dressed in the same dark green boiler suit, grinned as if they were at a church picnic. Then both headlight bulbs suddenly blew, died with a gentle pop. The engine continued to operate. I put it in drive and drove it through the trees and rutted track, whipping the windscreen. It wasn't until I touched pavement 40 minutes later that I stopped. I never returned to retrieve my belongings. I came onto a brief piece hidden in a Montana newspaper 2 months later. An abandoned cook site was discovered by searches deep in the same mountains. In a caravan, 3 bodies were shot in the back of the head. The cops referred to it as a drug debt gone awful. The murderers were never apprehended. The coffee container with the money is still with me. I've never paid a single bill. I occasionally pull one out and check the serial numbers when it's really quiet. They are new, consecutive, and have never been distributed. I now reside in a city. Lots of lights, lots of sound. However, each time I hear someone or smell a lighter fluid, singing a traditional church hymn on the street, I actually cross to the other side. Swift. There are invitations that you only get just once. The brothers, the rent continued to rise. I just needed silence since the job was killing me. I purchased and sold nearly everything. Moved into a small cabin, constructed myself using blueprints I obtained online on an inexpensive plot of forest land, 2 hours from the closest actual town in northern Idaho. Just a wood stove. No mobile coverage. No electricity lines. Rainwater barrels and a lengthy dirt driveway that was muddy half the time. The initial months were ideal. I read books, planted potatoes, and cut wood. By lantern light, the only people I saw were Tom and Ray, the elderly brothers who owned the property next to me. Every week, they came by in their rattling opportunity to exchange eggs for batteries or coffee. They didn't stay long. The majority of the conversation was Tom's. Ray only gave a nod and gazed at the floor. Tom arrived by himself one late October afternoon. He had a paper grocery bag and was standing at my door. "I'm not feeling well," he remarked. "I thought you might like these apples before they spoil." I grabbed the bag. The apples were tiny and flawless. "I'm grateful. I hope Ray feels better. Tell him." Tom gave his beard a scratch. "Are you doing okay on your own out here?" "I'm doing fine. Excellent." He glanced beyond me into the cabin before turning back to the trees. People can feel lonely at times. Funny things happen to a man who is lonely. I dismissed it with a giggle. He departed. After 2 days, I was splitting when I saw bootprints in the soft ground behind my shed. It was like kindling. Heavy footprints that were deeper than mine emerged from the forest and came to a stop at the rear wall. They only went there and back in the same direction. I lost them on rocky ground after pursuing them for 100 yards into the pines. That evening, for the first time since moving in, the door was barred. The prints returned the following morning, getting closer and nearly touching the shed. Someone had been standing there for a while. I walked the entire property line with my rifle. Nothing. In order to get supplies, I drove into town and inquired at the small shop if anyone had noticed outsiders in the vicinity of my road. Behind the counter, the woman shrugged. "Now, only you and the brothers reside there." She uttered those words. "Been silent for many years. My door was open 6 in the morning when I arrived home. I never failed to close it. There was nothing lacking. My cash box, tools, and canned goods are all exactly where I left them. However, my lone chair had been occupied. It was a warm pillow. I began sleeping with the gun next to the bed. Ray arrived by himself a week later. I had never seen him without Tom before. He appeared more slender. He had crimson eyes. Do you have a cough remedy?" he inquired. I gave him whiskey and honey. He drank it slowly while seated at my table. "Where's Tom?" I inquired. "Home," Ray murmured. He had a hoarse-like voice. "He no longer wants me to come over. Claims that I speak too much." "You're always welcome," Ray said, gazing at the ground. "Some things a man shouldn't know about his own brother." Without saying anything further, he departed. I heard dragging noises behind me that evening. The cabin, heavy and slow, like a large object being dragged through leaves. I raised the rifle and opened the door. Nothing, just the typical woodland noise and darkness. I discovered fresh blood droplets in a straight line that led from the trees to my shed in the morning. They halted at the door of the shed. I had the rifle ready when I opened it. There was a deer inside, hanging from the rafters by its rear legs, its head missing, its guts clean and covered in blood, kept seeping into a plastic bucket that was set underneath my bucket. The cut was expertly done and flawless. I chopped it down, hauled it deep into the forest, and buried everything I could. Throughout, my hands trembled. 2 nights later, at 2 in the morning, there was a knock. 3 slow knocks. With my rifle on my lap, I sat up in bed. 3 more knocks. I muttered through the "Who is it?" At the door, no response. I bided my time for an hour. Nothing more. I opened at morning. The entrance. There was a mason jar filled with blood, a black liquid, on the step. A single human tooth floated on top. I was a driver, directly to the brothers' residence. There was their truck. The door is halfway open. I summoned them. No response. There was an unpleasant stench within. Something sharper and old-fashioned. Tom took a seat in his rocking rocker, looking out the window. His head was unnaturally bent back due to the large incision in his throat. In a pool of blood that had seeped into the wood, Ray lay on the kitchen floor, with the hunting knife still in his grasp. His wrists were ripped open, as if he had done it himself. There was a shaky-looking note on the table. He forced me to assist. I was no longer able to. I threw up in the dirt after running outside. The sheriff arrived. They declared it to be murderous suicide, claimed that Ray killed Tom before killing himself. The case was quickly concluded. The following week, I moved out. For whatever I could receive, I sold the land. A few months later, I received an old newspaper story in the mail. There is no return address. A young couple vanished on the same forest in 1994. The groceries were still in the back of their running automobile. Drag marks leading away were discovered by searches. Into the forest. There was never anything else found. Tom's conversation with the reporter was quoted in the article. People believe that the forests grabbed them. Woods don't take nobody, he declared. Sometimes all a man has to do is hold on to what is rightfully his. Every night, I still check my doors. I currently reside in an apartment on the 2nd level, with neighbors on both sides. Occasionally, I get up at 2 in the morning. Yes, I hear 3 slow knocks. I know, but they never show up. They will eventually. But they never show up. They will eventually. The circle my spouse and I purchased 40 acres in the northern Idaho highlands in 2018. No electricity lines. No neighbors within 12 miles. Using our own hands, we constructed a modest cabin, installed solar panels. We assured ourselves that this was freedom. The first year seemed ideal. We produced beans and potatoes, raised hens, and only made 1 monthly trip to the city to buy salt and flour. We enjoy the silence. I strolled along the fence line one October morning to look for elk damage. The cabin is around 2 miles away. I came upon a strange-looking piece of ground deep within the trees. The pine needles were removed with a flawless scrape. Circle, perhaps 10 feet in diameter. Someone had piled pebbles into a low automobile in the center. The bottom is still damp with fresh rocks. That circle and the cairn were the only footsteps leading in or out. When I went home, I showed my wife the photo I had taken with my phone. Most likely hunters, she said, marking a spot, but her gaze lingered too long on the picture. We heard steady, slow cutting that evening, thumps in the same direction. An axe, not a chainsaw. Until it ended close to dawn. We sat up in bed and listened. I returned with my rifle the following week. The circle had grown to about 20 feet. Fresh pine boughs had been placed around the taller, chest-high cairn like a bed dot, in addition to 1 work glove rested on the rock. I misplaced my left glove while chopping firewood months ago. The thumb was worn through from the maul handle, so I knew it was mine. I put it up. It was toasty inside. I hurried home and informed my spouse that we needed to take a short days, go to town, and give this some thought. She quickly agreed. After packing the vehicle, we secured the cabin. I kept an eye on the rearview mirror as we rolled down the dusty road. After 30 minutes, a man stood in the center of the track, emerging from the woods, standing tall and slender. They were clad in army surplus green canvas. He was carrying an axe over his shoulder. He didn't provide a wave. He hardly glanced at the truck, till he was gone and the road turned. We stayed with her sister while we were in town. I gave the sheriff a call. The following day, to deputies left in a car. Nothing was discovered. No circle, no glove, no footprints, no Karen. Perhaps children from the summer camp 20 meters away were playing. They claimed dot tricks. Nevertheless, we returned home. For 3 weeks, nothing occurred. The chickens stopped laying after that. The nest boxes were empty every morning. One evening, I discovered the 12 birds arranged in a line on the fence rail. Their heads turned in the same direction, as if they were observing the cabin, their necks broken. My wife woke me up that evening. She said, "Someone is in the house." That's when I heard it. Downstairs, bare feet on the wood floor, modest steps, stopping, then continuing. I waited at the top of the stairs after grabbing the shotgun from next to the bed. The step came to a stop directly beneath us. A voice appeared, serene and uncomplicated. "Once more, you left the door unlocked." It belonged to a man. Voice, older, grumpy, somewhat amiable, and not angry. I yelled at him to go. No response. I sneaked down with the pistol 10 minutes later. All the rooms were deserted. The 2 doors remained locked from the within. Deadbolts were hurled. That night, we slept in the truck with the motor running with the lights turned on. The following morning, all of the cabin's windows had flawless handprints on the exterior glass. The figure appeared to be standing on tiptoe with their palm and 5 fingers raised. For a typical male, the prints were excessively large. Before midday, we loaded up the truck with all we could fit. As I was leaving, I halted where I had previously seen the man. New boot prints appeared on the road, far away from our cabin. Beside them, smaller prints, the size of my spouse, yet she was seated just next to me in the truck. We never returned. People inquire why did we not put up a stronger fight. Ran. I assure them that land up there is inexpensive. For a purpose. Certain locations already belong to another person, and they dislike exchanging. The Wilson family, I decided to leave the hectic world behind and build a tiny cottage deep in the Oklahoma woods. I was alone with my tools and the peaceful trees. No throng shoving, no phones ringing. I gathered rainwater, cultivated my own food, and used my hands to fix broken things. Though occasionally lonely, life felt liberating. When the Wilson family arrived one afternoon in their vintage pickup, that all changed. The man was the first to emerge. His beard was beginning to turn grey, and he was tall. "Hello there," he waved. He spoke in a friendly but weary tone. "My name is Tom. This is my wife, Anna, and our girl Lily. She's 6 years old." With her hair tied back simply, Anna grinned from the passenger seat. Shyly, Lily emerged with a plush bear in her hand. I walked over, wiping my hands on my pants. "What brings you folks out this far?" I inquired. Tom recounted how they were from a nearby town and wanted to purchase land nearby. He said, "We want to live like you, grow our own goods, stay away from the filth, and have no bills, no other people's rules." Anna gave a nod. "It's also for Lily, better than the loud and schools of the city." Lily kicked a stone while staring at the ground. I gave them a tour of my home. I warned them it's hard work. You have to fix everything yourself when it gets cold in the winter, but it's pleasant. We spent hours conversing. Tom inquired about wells and solar panels. "How do you deal with animals?" he pondered. I informed him about little pest traps and fencing. Anna gave fruit canning recipes as she warmed up. Lily inquired about my dog. I said, "Not anymore. However, you might be able to obtain one." They appeared enthusiastic. Tom and a hard handshake. "Regards, neighbor. Will return shortly." For once, I enjoyed having company as they drove away. One week, their truck returned later with a full load of boxes. About a mile through the forest, they purchased the land adjacent to mine. I assisted them in unloading. Tom smiled and remarked, "This is it." Anna gave Lily a hug. "Our fresh beginning," she said to her. "No more worries." We made a rudimentary shelter together using logs and tarps. Tom worked quickly, yet occasionally he paused and gazed blankly. "Are you all right?" I once inquired. He gave a blink, just pondering. Despite her troubled expression, Anna remained silent. Days went by. I visited often. We ate meals together. Tom opened up one night by a fire. Back at home. Things were bad, he muttered. Family issues. He's a bad man, my dad. Put us in danger. Anna touched his arm, she said. We're safe now. Happy, Lily drew pictures in the mud. But then something seemed off. I heard sounds coming from their direction at night. Not animals, but footsteps that crunch leaves and suddenly come to a halt. Perhaps deer, I thought. When I walked over one day, I noticed Tom and Anna moving slowly, like if they were dreaming. Without speaking, they carried boxes to the vehicle. Returning and back and forth, eyes vacant. Lily sat by herself and observed, what's going on? I made a call. Tom pivoted, his expression vacant. Just packing, he whispered. Anna didn't raise her head. I got a bad feeling in my gut. Packing for what? I applied pressure. We're going to check something, Anna stated bluntly. Lily came running over to me. I don't want to go, she muttered. Her eyes were wide with fear. I dropped on my knees. Don't worry, young one. Your parents are the ones who know best. However, I pondered on the inside. Their house was quiet the following morning. To quiet, I strolled over. The door to the shelter was ajar. Things were left halfway between within. There is food on the table, folded clothes. They are nowhere to be found. Tom. Anna, I shouted. Nothing. Along the way, I came across their truck. The doors were unlocked. Thin and starving, their dog whimpered inside. On the seat are wallets, phones as well, and a huge pile of cash, thousands. I made a guess. Why don't you do that? I looked around, my hands trembling. My fingers were licked by the dog, desperate. I gave it some leftovers. Out of my pocket. I then looked at the phones. One had a photo. Lily is sitting on a rock and her eyes are wide. Like she was terrified of something. No more hints. I hurried back to my cabin and shut the door. Footsteps that evening came quite near. Stop. Crunch. Crunch. I picked up my rifle and looked out the window. There was no distinct shape, only shadows moving between trees. More than one man. My breath came out quickly. I muttered to myself. Worrying took over the days. I reported what I saw to the police. At first, their search turned up nothing. Perhaps they simply departed. But with the money and dog, no, I couldn't sleep, an officer remarked. I jumped at every sound. I once heard someone muttering in a low voice outdoors. I am at the weapon, but all that was visible was darkness. Months passed. I raised my fences and remained vigilant. Then, 4 years later, near the truck, in the woods, hunters discovered bones. One child, 2 grown-ups, Tom, Anna, and Lily, according to test. Nobody was aware of how they passed away. Too old to tell. Tom's father or other evil individuals they knew may have committed murder, substances. They reportedly had money from that. Or did they put an end to it themselves? I still live here, but it's no longer tranquil. I listen for footsteps and double-check the locks. What if the perpetrator returns? The secrets are hidden in the woods, and I now understand *, it's not always safe to live off the grid.